So this past weekend, I was invited to appear on the Busu Talk Show, which is an anime talk show on Twitch hosted by my friends Avo, Andrew, and Donnie. On that show, we talked about anime recommendations for newcomers to anime. We talked about a lot of great anime there, and if you want to watch the episode for yourself, I put a link to it in the description below. One of the challenges we faced putting together recommendations as a group was making sure that none of our recommendations overlapped with each other, and it made me wonder what my top anime recommendations would be without that restriction. So that's what I'll be sharing here in this video, my top 5 anime recommendations for newcomers. That said, I do still recommend watching our episode of the Busu Talk Show because there isn't a lot of overlap between what we shared there and what I'm going to share here, and it could be nice to get a second, third, and even fourth perspective on a show that you're considering instead of just one. Big shout out to everyone at the Busu Talk Show, thank you for having me, I had a great time. And also a big shout out to everyone who subscribed to this channel since my last video. I'm now 10 subscribers closer to the beer and whiskey that Nico Floflo is gonna have to buy for me when I hit 100 subscribers, but more than that, I'm excited to be sharing my anime thoughts and opinions with 10 new people. So, without further ado, let's get into this video. Haikyu is a story about boys playing volleyball. That's it, yet it's still one of the most popular anime of all time. I didn't think I'd like it because 1, I'm not a fan of sports, and 2, I wasn't keen on watching a show whose cast is 95% dudes. But I finally took the dive during this quarantine, and now it's one of my favorite anime. I was hooked after the first episode because of how passionate our protagonist was, despite his inexperience and lack of resources when it comes to volleyball. And when someone gives their all to something like how Hinata does, it's a treat to see how it plays out regardless of the outcome. And we definitely get some intrigue for future episodes, because not only do we get a taste of how Haikyuu's animation and sound design can make volleyball exciting even for those who couldn't care less about sports, we also get to look forward to how Hinata and Kageyama's relationship grows moving forward. And these points only grow stronger as each game gets more intense and as we're introduced to new characters that we can't help but love. One of the downsides to this show though is that while it is available on Netflix, only the first 2 of the 4 seasons are on there, and you would have to subscribe to an anime streaming service in order to watch the remainder of the show. That said, if you enjoyed Haikyu enough to go out of your way to watch seasons 3 and 4, then that would also show how good of a recommendation Haikyu is for newcomers to the anime genre. Part of why I recommend Cowboy Bebop for newcomers is because it's one of the rare instances where I think the English dub suits the series better than the original Japanese voice acting, which means this anime can appeal to newcomers who aren't so keen on reading subtitles. But more than that, the first episode to Cowboy Bebop is a class act, and it's my favorite first episode to any series I've seen so far. And while the science fiction twist to the old western aesthetic is both detailed and believable in this series, the place where Cowboy Bebop really shines to me is in its soundtrack. On top of giving the show a classy feel, Cowboy Bebop's jazz and blues dominant soundtrack can also be more familiar to Western audiences than the Japanese-style songs you'll find in the openings and endings to most anime, including the other ones I've compiled here in this video. My main complaint with Cowboy Bebop is that it's episodic in nature, but its episodic nature is also one of its strengths. That's because Cowboy Bebop gives each segment its own musical theme, which makes Cowboy Bebop's soundtrack one of the most diverse I've encountered in anime. Demon Slayer is about a boy and his sister turned demon as they slay demons. I'd imagine even newcomers to anime have heard about this one given its popularity, and it was even recognized as anime of the decade, my own opinion on which I'll reserve for a different video. I'm recommending this one for mainly one reason, and that's because Demon Slayer's animation is top notch. I could tell from the opening shot alone that I was in for a treat, and as far as animation goes, Demon Slayer delivered. I will say that I didn't love Demon Slayer at first because the story itself felt cliched, but since the issue might not apply to an anime newcomer and because of how superb the animation is, I'd be hard pressed to not include Demon Slayer as a recommendation here. Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood is a show that's on everyone's recommended anime list, and it makes consistent appearances for a reason. It was one of the first anime I've ever watched, and it's the only anime that my whole family of non-anime watchers has finished of their own volition. In the first episode alone, we're shown how alchemy works and the different ways it can be used, we're introduced to an interesting set of recurring characters, we're informed that our protagonists have a goal that might not be aligned with their actions, and we're led to believe there are complex issues beneath the surface that our protagonists tread. And the episode does all this without explicitly telling us anything, and the curiosity that comes with the territory makes it difficult to watch just one episode. The only downside is that it can be confusing as to whether you should watch Fullmetal Alchemist or Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, and my recommendation is to watch Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. And that's because Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood is not a sequel to Fullmetal Alchemist, but rather a reiteration of the same story. The difference is that Brotherhood sticks closer to the source material and works well as a standalone, whereas Fullmetal Alchemist deviates from the writer's original vision and requires you to watch the movie Conquerors of Shambhala to make up for its lack of closure. I talked about Hunter x Hunter quite a bit on the Busu Talk Show, so I won't say too much more about it here, but I included it again here because to me it's just that strong of a recommendation not only for newcomers, but even to anime regulars who haven't seen it yet. The anime has a colorful and interesting cast of characters, the plot is as fun and engaging as the action sequences that move it forward, and it's perfect if you want something lighter than Fullmetal Alchemist without taking a dip in storytelling quality. My main and likely only criticism for Hunter x Hunter doesn't even come into play until the Chimera Ant arc, which doesn't matter as much for people watching Hunter x Hunter on Netflix since the Chimera Ant arc isn't even there to begin with. And despite the Chimera Ant arc being the arc that propelled Hunter x Hunter into the prestige it holds today, I believe newcomers to anime would still have a great time with the 75 episodes available on Netflix alone. And if the newcomer to anime ends up watching all 75 episodes of Hunter x Hunter, I think the fact that they willingly watched 75 episodes of anime is more important than what they think about the arc that comes after it. And yeah, those are my top 5 anime recommendations for newcomers to anime. Naturally, there are many more gateways into anime than the ones I presented here, and even more than the ones we presented in the Busu Taku Show. And if there's an anime you think is particularly great for getting people into anime, please feel free to share them in the comments below. Either way, thanks for watching, feel free to subscribe if you like anime, beer, or whiskey, and I'll see you next Monday with whatever I decide to put out next.